Welcome back to the ELA Professional Learning Series. This webinar will highlight the Accelerate ELA approach. By the end of this webinar, you will be able to explain the acceleration model and implement acceleration strategies to support your unique group of diverse learners. During this presentation, we will explore the answers to some frequently asked questions around accelerating learning. The first question we will explore is, what does it mean to accelerate learning? To accelerate learning means to connect unfinished learning with the context of new learning. In other words, giving students what they need when they need it to access the grade level appropriate content or curriculum task. Acceleration is support which builds students' knowledge and skills required to be successful in core instruction within the context of high-quality curriculum or a type of intervention. Acceleration is action planning in a proactive and deliberate manner. Acceleration is targeted and individualized for students based on their specific needs as gathered from diagnostic and formative data collected as students engage in the work of the curriculum. The backbone of this strategy is rooted in strong evidence on best practices for tutoring and addressing unfinished learning that fall into three pillars: intentional structures, high-quality materials, and effective instruction. For maximum impact, these pillars must be implemented in tandem. The acceleration cycle should be a routine part of every ELA teacher's instructional planning for the academic year or for summer learning. This cycle of continuous planning and responding to address student needs will allow educators to personalize learning as they move through the four phases: diagnose, plan, deliver, and monitor. Achieve the Core's report, Reading as Liberation, an examination of the research base, published by Student Achievement Partners, identifies and explains 5 essential components of literacy, or the accelerators for every student learning to read and use language capably. Making sure students learn how to read, securing solid foundational reading skills early on in students' school careers, ideally by grade 3, so students can continually develop as fluent readers in every grade level thereafter. Growing knowledge of the world so students develop a trove of knowledge to reference whenever they read. Expanding the vocabulary children bring with them through a volume of reading and word study. Marshaling evidence and communicating it when speaking and writing about what the text is conveying. And deepening understanding of what is read through regular reading of ever richer, more complex text with supports as needed for universal access and success. The benefits of acceleration in ELA come from the personalized learning approach to ensure all students are getting what they need in the moment. In the same report from Achieve the Core, it states, personalized learning and literacy education is an approach in which teaching and other learning experiences build on each student's strengths, address each student's needs, spur student motivation and agency, and help all students meet grade level standards and ultimately achieve college and career readiness. Let's take a moment to summarize our understanding of acceleration. Accelerating learning is not teaching skills in isolation. Instead, teachers provide supports during the core instruction to keep text at the center of learning. This also does not mean to teach students below grade level content. Instead, utilize just-in-time supports during core instruction to help students access grade level content. Accelerated learning does not suggest speeding up instruction or compressing content to get through more in less time. Instead, use the embedded supports in the HQIM or high-quality instructional materials to build understanding. This also does not mean having to continuously locate resources outside of HQIM to accelerate learning. Instead, the concept of accelerated learning is to maintain the integrity of the HQIM by using the resources that are already available. Accelerated learning is not homogeneous grouping by perception. Instead, strategic groupings are determined by analyzing relevant and current data. The data, however, should not only be from standards-based assessments. Instead, use the diagnostics and/or formative assessments already included within the HQIM. A common misconception is that accelerate and remediate are synonyms. Let's now take some time to explore how acceleration is different from remediation. First, let's think about what remediation is. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, to remediate means to provide a remedy. In other words, when you remediate, you are trying to correct something that has gone wrong. For example, if my child is sick with a high fever, I make a doctor's appointment to receive a treatment to remedy the sickness. The doctor instructs me to administer an over-the-counter fever-reducing medicine. Remediation in the classroom would look like reacting to student performance after the lesson, reteaching skills in isolation based on standards alone, teaching below grade level standards to catch students up, and only addressing the part of the problem without finding the root of the cause. Referring back to our example about going to the doctor, sometimes a quick remedy means that the sickness will not be cured, causing me to schedule another appointment. At this point, we have now waited a week, but more symptoms have come up. And now there's a cough, severe congestion. Because the doctor treated only a symptom, the infection went undiagnosed and more symptoms are now present. In the case of education, acceleration is actually an antonym of remediation. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, accelerate means to bring about at an earlier time. Let's think about the doctor analogy one more time. To take a proactive approach, I could reinforce good hygiene with my child when they are not in my presence, provide immune-boosting vitamins, etc. Now, this does not guarantee my child won't get sick. However, it does reinforce those healthy habits. Acceleration in the classroom looks like pre-reading lesson materials to identify the knowledge and skill demands of the core instruction, providing supports at just the right moment for students to use in order to access the grade level content, proactively plan for the knowledge and skills that students will need supports for, and differentiate the specific supports for identified students based on performance during the core instruction. Historically, educators have been informed to focus solely on the standards aligned to lessons. If students are not progressing, then remediation of standard-focused skills and isolation was suggested to support. This is being reactive to student performance and responding with support after the fact. Updated research has shown, however, that student comprehension and understanding of substantive topics soar when they are able to effectively access complex grade-level texts. A barrier for many students in comprehension is simply not having the background knowledge of the topics in order to make connections to and grow their understanding. Instead of having a remediation mindset, research supports shifting to an acceleration mindset. An acceleration mindset is proactive planning. Teachers preview complex texts and lessons included in high-quality instructional materials and take note of the knowledge and skills students will need in order to access the tasks for the week. This is planning to give students in the moment supports when they will benefit from the supports the most. In this example, here are 4 units that may be implemented in grade 3. The skills that may need support in these units are traits of a trickster character, comparing and contrasting types of treasures, and the relationship of historical events. Additionally, Some specific knowledge building that may need supports for these units include Cajun phrases and food, landscapes in Louisiana, types of treasures, pirates, understanding value, and historical people, the time period of the early 1800s and the size of the Louisiana Territory. The benefit of using assessments within your HQIM is to get a clear picture of your unique learning community. After analyzing the data, preview upcoming lessons to determine where additional knowledge building or skill development is needed for students to access the upcoming tasks in the lessons. This way, students are still getting the support they need to build understanding, as well as accessing grade-level content. Now let's explore the resources that are available to you to accelerate learning. Here are 3 examples of general supports that can be used to accelerate learning. Guiding questions are included to support students in making connections to the text, checking for understanding, and scaffolding to complete a task. Direct support and examples are included through teacher cues to prompt student action, anchor chart references, and explicit vocabulary support to access the meaning of a text. And additional modeling can also be included to model processes, analyze student work, and prompt teachers to use teacher talk moves. What is more important to remember when providing supports is that you are not altering the complexity or rigor of the task, but providing just enough support for students to continue progressing through productive struggle. Here are some examples of specific supports for identified learning groups. For English learners, include opportunities for paired reading with a text in the native language, preview, view, review information in the native language, and specific connections to vocabulary terms in the native language. For students with significant cognitive disabilities, companion resources are available on the Louisiana Believes website that are correlated to the ELA Guidebooks 3-5-2022 units, or sentence stems, or frames, and specific small group instruction can be implemented. For literacy supports, there are fluency practice opportunities embedded throughout units, additional models through read-alouds or partner reads, and specific vocabulary instructions such as morphology. These supports do not always have to live in these individual categories. Some can be used across a variety of diverse learner populations. Here is an example of how these acceleration techniques can be embedded into the HQIM. Let's look at how this lesson can be differentiated to support all learners. Review the discussion question. How might Louisiana's unique culture influence the characters, setting, and plot of a story? These guiding questions support students in responding to the discussion question by prompting students to think about what is unique about living in Louisiana and how that would affect story elements. Some direct support and examples are included to refer students back to a previous text they read that could support them in responding. Create a list of cultural elements of Louisiana, remind students to use conversation stems, and provide direct, in-the-moment feedback to pairs. A model is included for teachers to use teacher talk moves for continuing a discussion. And the supports end with links to resources to specific diverse populations for a teacher to review and use as needed. Now that you know what acceleration is and where to find the resources, let's explore how to plan for acceleration in ELA. In order to effectively plan for acceleration, there are 3 main questions you want to ask yourself. What does the data say? What does the HQIM say? And what does the schedule say? When considering what the data says, analyze the assessment data from the curricular assessments. This may include informal assessments and anecdotal notes, formative assessments from daily lessons, or curriculum-specific diagnostics. Identify what challenges are present with your unique learning environment, illustrated by the data. Then form homogeneous groups of students that share common challenges. Next, you will want to use the data you analyze and apply it to the high-quality instructional materials you implement in your classroom. Preview the upcoming assessments and lessons. Identify where the challenges you identified from the data can be addressed within the context of upcoming lessons. Finally, you'll want to schedule when your supports will be implemented. Annotate your lesson notes to include at what point of the lesson the supports will benefit the identified students the most. The idea is not to remediate, but to support students in accessing the skill or knowledge with a scaffolded approach within the context of the core instruction, not in isolation. Review the instructional minutes available to implement the lesson and plan for logical, data-informed adjustments to pacing that allow you to provide students with the needed supports to access grade-level content. Set the date and time for when and how you plan to include the supports within the lesson. Let's look at planning for acceleration by grade band, starting with K2 foundational skills lessons. Teachers should be very familiar with the way their foundational skills curriculum introduces sounds and skills to students. Students can benefit from being introduced to these skills before they will learn them in the whole group setting. Use the table of contents to see the skills that will benefit your students through acceleration. Some students may not have mastered a skill the first time they were introduced to it. For these students, it may be helpful to offer additional practice opportunities before they will need them to succeed on the next layer of instruction with that sound or skill. Teachers should use the phonics continuum or another tool like Dibbles to find where those children can use additional practice. Teachers should read through these resources to learn the skills needed in each lesson and how to use them. There are specific instructions for how to teach discrete sounds and then how to blend them together, as well as other foundational skills. The teacher will need to know the how-to for these lessons before they get in front of the child. These lessons are built from the CKLA knowledge and skills strands, but will be helpful regardless of which curriculum is used to help students learn the basic science of reading. Let's look at K2 knowledge lessons. Teachers should read through these resources to learn what knowledge building topics are included. Knowledge should be strategically built throughout the units of study. These lessons are built from CKLA knowledge and skills strand, but will also be helpful regardless of which curriculum is used to help students learn the basic science of reading. Each learning environment will come with different banks of knowledge. Teachers will need to know what students know in correlation to the topics and what students will need to know in order to access grade level content and tasks. Teachers should review resources to gain an understanding of what topics are covered in text for grades 3 through 10. Preview any upcoming lessons being taught by the HQIM and identify what knowledge and skills students will need in order to access any upcoming tasks. Analyze formative assessments from curriculum to get an accurate picture of what skills and knowledge students have, as well as what supports they will need to access the grade level content. When you plan for acceleration, use the knowledge and skills students need to access a text or a task in your core instruction. This can be done whole class or in small group. This is dependent upon your unique learning environments. Use the training from this video to plan for and accelerate ELA instruction. For additional professional learning opportunities, revisit the ELA Back to School Professional Learning Overview document. We will be linking new on-demand presentations on a rolling basis throughout the school year. Please contact ELA Guidebooks at elaguidebooks@la.gov with any questions. Thank you for your participation in this webinar today.